Chair of the Operations Committee, Commissioner Bandima, and welcome. I would like for you to get started. Let's start with, let's see, we're going to start with the CIP mid-year report. And of course, when you come forward, please give me your name so I can really get familiar. I know everybody, but I just need to get familiar with you a little bit more. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Lynette Washington. I am the Executive Director of Facilities.
Amen.
Good morning, Nicole Stewart, the Director of Facilities Planning.
Good morning, Cindy Smith, the Director of Facilities Design and Construction.
So generally, we do an update to the board on our CIP, and around this period of time, it's generally us giving a report on whatever percentage of the governor's budget that has been allocated towards the CIP. But in the context of some of the different things that have happened over the last 2 weeks, we decided to focus this presentation a little bit on the discussions around our state funding, how we get funded, just to give the public a little bit more information about the process. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to walk through the CIP process, how we get state funds, some of the different things that have been in the media about and providing clarity about how we get funds and some of the concerns that we have with the process.
I'm going to ask one question before you get started, because I did read it, and so what you're saying, this is a summary of information that you've already submitted to the board previously, but you dissected this part out to...
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And so just to get started, one of the things that we like to communicate is what our need is. And so back in 2012, there was a facilities assessment that was completed. We call it the Jacobs Report. And it basically looked at all of our systems across the district and all of our buildings. And it was 163 buildings at that period of time. And what they assess is, given the life cycle of the systems, what systems need to be repaired, which ones need to be upgraded, and what that cost is. And so the total repair cost at that snapshot in 2012 was about $3 billion. And if we pulled out just our HVAC repairs, it was about $1 billion. And so some of this is what we did, escalating it, because that was done in 2012, what it would be in today's time. The next one is just an overview of how we get funded. So over a period of time, we submit a request to the state, and also, excuse me, the city also does a review of it. And it's generally from about 70 million and all the way up to a little bit over 100 million. And that's just a portion of our most emergency need systemic projects that we submit every year. And so what you have in front of you is just basically our request. So the top two lines are our requests from FY14 to FY17. And then below is what we've been awarded. So every year, as you can see, there's a consistency of what we are awarded. One of the things that we're going to get a little bit more detailed in is talking a little bit about what the state awards, because some of that is new allocation and some of it is funds that we've been calling and we've been noted at it as recycled funds. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but that just gives you an overview of it. And so just to give a comparison, when we're talking about Baltimore City, to give you a little bit more context of our other counterparts in the different counties, Baltimore City, we receive about 17 million in terms of our local contribution in comparison to Montgomery County and Baltimore County, that's significantly higher. But we also all receive about 35 million in state contributions or state funds.
So I'm going to talk about, we've heard the terms lately, rescinded projects, which is, as some people have described it as money we give back. It's not necessarily money we give back. It goes back into a pot of money that then we can use for future projects. We have two major reasons why, since FY13, we have rescinded projects. Number one was the 21st Century Buildings Plan. We felt it would be fiscally irresponsible to be putting money in projects in schools that would be getting new or renovated buildings or being surplused as part of the 21st Century Buildings Plan. So projects that were cited for 21st century were rescinded in past years since FY13. In addition, partial funding, which has been a problem for us recently. When a project is partially funded and it's given to us in allocations over multiple years, over those multiple years, the prices of those projects increase. And then we don't have the local money to supplement that budget, and then we have to rescind it because of that increased cost that we don't have the funds to cover. So this kind of shows you where since FY15 to FY17, in FY15, for example, we received 98% of our projects as fully funded, and only 2% was partial funded, versus in FY17, 57% of our projects were, or 57% of the amount of projects was partially funded. So that has made a big difference over just the course of those 3 years.
So, yeah, thanks. This is helpful. I'd like to just drill down on this a bit because I'm not sure I entirely understand it. Maybe just by way of an example, let's say there's a school that has a $6 million roof repair, and you anticipate state funding with a local match of $6 million, local match of whatever, say $1 million. So, in the example you gave, you're receiving $2 million a year over 3 years from the state? Or
Possibly. So actually, in 2 slides from now, we actually have a specific example that shows how it works.
Okay.
But yes, so it could be that they gave us a portion of it for 3 years, and then over the course of those 3 years, by the time we get the full amount, the project is now $8 million, which would
But
be
why isn't
more than
that
we had.
anticipated when you do the cost estimate and submit an application to the state? Why are you not escalating the cost to assume that in 3 years, we will actually award a contract, and over that 3-year period, we will anticipate X% increase in cost?
Because we don't know that they're going to give it to us over 3 years. We assume when we put in the request it's going to be fully funded over that 1 year. So when they do it over 3 years, there's not escalation built in. There is escalation built in, but it's for 1 year, not for 3.
Well, I think that's useful
So-
for the public to understand, because I didn't understand that point. So we're not actually requesting multi-year funding. We're requesting full funding in 1 year, and the state is responding with multi-year funding.
That is correct.
Okay, that's a really important point, I think, for people to understand, that
Yes,
it's not something we're requesting.
that's
Okay.
correct, yes.
I have a question as well. Firstly, I'm gonna go back, and I just want to commend you for something you did today, and then I'll get up to my question. What you put down here, when you dissected this information from information that you gave to the board in long documents through the years, you probably gave this to them, but being a new person on the board, and I think that you've heard many times me say, break it down, When I get a document with all the numbers in it, and for laymen, because you guys are the experts, when I get a document with number, it's hard for anybody to dissect some of this information and what you have done, that we need to be more transparent with the community so the community can fight with us for all of these issues. What you put down here let me know clearly what actually happened and how we really lost a lot. So I am really glad that you did this. And back to the question that Andy's asking, as experts in this area, when you are doing a budget, capital budget, or any kind of budget, and for example, you said the roof and all of that, don't you anyway project that when you're calculating the money that you need to do this project, calculate the fact if it doesn't occur this year, the possibility of it going 2%, 1%, whatever, and you ask for more? Can you do that, or have you ever done that? It would seem to me that we know that when you, Dr. Stewart, I'm not sure if this is your area, but when you are projecting the amount of money, for example, if you're building a building that's $21 million, and we know how the state moves slow, wouldn't we project it in another year or two, that $21 million will be now 23, 24 million? Do we think this out before it happens? I'm just wondering how
Right.
we
So-
operate.
So you're asking about an escalation rate, and so Cindy's team, she's the design and construction team, they're the ones who bill out the budgets for the capital projects, and so they do put in an escalation rate. We started putting in a 2%, then we increased it to a 4%, and one of the things that Cindy was able to do is when she looked at the trend data, with the current market conditions, the escalation rate probably should have been at a 13% because of the market conditions. But again, as Cindy was saying, is that when we don't know how the state is going to fund us, then we can't really predict. And so we do build in an escalation rate, but we couldn't have predicted that these projects would have been partially funded over a 3-year period of time so when we did the cost estimates and when we did the analysis, we would have been able to build that in. But again, it's the state's decision of how they want to fund us for those projects. But we do put in an escalation rate.
I'm not gonna hold you, I'm never gonna beat this dead dog to death, but we know, and we all know how the state operates. I think we all know that. So we need to, because being you guys are experienced, we are in this area, we need to start thinking about how they think about Baltimore City and how they predict, or how can we predict what's going to happen, partial funding or whatever. I think that now that we're going through this process, we need to start thinking futuristic, knowing what's going on. Because when you look at these numbers, it's clear as day that what's going on is that we're not getting what everybody else should be getting. Okay?
And I think that the other point that we also did was that we had a conversation with the state to indicate to them, because as you see, the partial funding started in FY15 and then they accelerated to FY17. Most of our projects were partially funded. There was a discussion that happened during our review and presentation of our CIP to the state that said that partial funding does not work for Baltimore City, given the fact that we don't have local funds to cover it.
Right.
And the state did indicate that they would no longer partially fund us. And so, hoping that moving forward, there's something that, we can be able to codify in some kind of regulations. But we are hoping that we won't be partially funded, so that our escalations that we apply to our projects are actually something that's real.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a question again. I don't, given that we get anywhere between $35 and $37 million a year from the state, so if you could help understand, we're submitting, I think you said $75 million worth of projects or something in that range? And so how deferential is the state to our prioritization in terms of submitting 75? Do we have 35 million that represents our priority, or are they picking up from the 75? And why would they multi-year fund projects? What did they get out of it, given that we're getting the same amount of money every year? Why do they arbitrarily decide to multi-fund projects?
So, for the first question around the prioritization, so we generally provide our priorities for the state. When we submit our form, there's a priority list. There's times that the state does take consideration and they will follow the priority list, and sometimes they may have other agendas that they may not follow the priority list. They may choose something at a lower priority based off of if they feel like another project should be coordinated, some of those different things. And so they make the final decision of how the projects are prioritized. One of the reasons why we include all the projects is that if there's a project that cannot move forward because it comes in higher than the cost, then you have the opportunity to pull from those other projects that are still on the list. So if we only gave them 35 million, we wouldn't, if we had additional funds in our contingency account, which they're going to discuss in a little bit more detail, we wouldn't be able to pull from those projects. So all of the projects that we want considered have to be presented to the state for them to be approved at that period of time. The other question around partial funding, when we had a conversation with the state around partial funding, they had some concerns around our ability or our capacity because of our staffing. So Baltimore City staff structure is not like Baltimore County. We don't have as many staff. They probably have 3 times as many staff. But one of the things that we have indicated and was able to show that we are able to complete our projects on time, even though we have a smaller staff than some of our other LEAs. And so that was their understanding of why they were partially funding us, is just, maybe we didn't have the capacity. For us, it really it's not beneficial because it means that it takes those projects that much longer to be completed. For us, we would rather be fully funded for the project so we can get them done within the time frame that it's estimated for them to be completed.
Okay, so, back to the partial funding implications then. So when we have multi-year awards, that ends up with higher costs over that course of time. So for example, we had 4 projects in FY17 that were partially funded to the amount of $10.6 million that had to be rescinded because of the escalated costs that they came into after that course of the 3-year funding that they received. All 4 of those happened to be HVAC projects as well. So, for example, here's the example we were talking about. We had a project for Samuel Corwich Taylor for HVAC that was originally estimated in 2014 for the FY16 CIP at $7.5 million. The local allocation would be 1.5 and the state allocation would have been 6. Over the first year, second year, and third year allocations, it took 3 years to get all the money. By the time those 3 years were done, when the project was bid then in March of 2017, the bid came in at 8.4, which was significantly higher than our original estimated cost, and we did not have the local monies to cover that. So that would have had to been rescinded. This happened with 4 HVAC projects this past year.
So when we do have to rescind a project, what happens is that money then goes into a reserve contingency account. In 2017, the amount in that reserve contingency account was $32 million. And that was from all of the FY16 and FY17 projects. I'll start over. So when we do have to rescind a project, it then goes into our reserve contingency account. So we're not actually giving any money back, as Cindy said earlier. It goes into this account. And in 2017, we had about $32 million in that reserve contingency account from FY16 and FY17 projects that were rescinded. And we are able to use the funds in the contingency account in 2 different ways. As Lynette said, we could take some of that money and then apply it to projects in the previous year CIP. So in this example, we were able to apply 20.5 of that $32 million to FY18 projects that were deferred. Deferred meaning it was a part of our request list, they were prioritized projects, and there was just not enough funds from the state to fund those projects. But we are able to use our contingency funds to then go back and fund those projects. So the issue there is those projects, of course, were requested a whole year earlier. So between the time when we requested those projects in FY18 to the time when we can allocate money from the contingency fund to those projects, it's been a whole year since those projects the costs have been estimated. So what we do is we look at all our FY18 projects in this example that didn't get funded, and we make a determination that some of these projects, the costs haven't increased that much over a year. So those are the projects that we move forward and identify for the state to apply our contingency funds to those projects. However, at times there are funds that we, due to the limitations of how we can apply those funds, we have contingency funds left over in our account. And what the state then does is recycle those funds into our new year allocation. So from that $32 million, about $12 million was recycled into our FY19 CIP. And so the recycling of funds in and of itself isn't really an issue. The issue then becomes when the state says, okay, we're recycling $12 million of your CIP dollars from your contingency fund, so then we will reduce the amount of new money that you're getting from the state. So every year, the total CIP amount that goes out to all the LEAs is about $280 million. And so that's the new bond money from the state. And then they make a determination about how they allocate that money to the LEAs, so all the different counties. So essentially what happens then is we then receive a smaller portion of the new money because they make that decision to count our recycled money against us. So in this example, so we are right now at the 75% recommendation for FY19. So the total that has been recommended so far is $32 million. 12 million of that is recycle funds, and then about 20 million that comes from that and 20 million comes from that pot of the new money from the state.
Commissioner.
So first looking in the rearview mirror, then looking forward, it's really astounding that the state can do this, that they can use our money as new money towards the 35 or 38 million that they've already appropriated and budgeted. And so the state's saving $12 million, really, because they're using money that we had to give back because of the multi-year funding and other issues.
They're actually not saving it because they're giving it to other LEAs.
So
They're spending the same amount.
Almost worse,
Yeah.
that they're going to the potentially wealthier counties. So I'm not really to answer now, because you guys know this so well, and it's very clear you will have done everything possible to make that green box bigger on the left and then have the 11.9 as small as possible. I don't understand why we can't spend closer to 100% of that contingency. I'm sure there are very good reasons. I don't fully understand it, and I'm probably not going to understand it today. But looking forward, I am curious, do we foresee this continuing? I know there has been discussion about multi-year funding and whether that's going to continue, but what can we do to avoid this happening in future years?
I think you all should add. I think one key reason for this is as they talked about, there's the partial funding issue, so it's hard to predict the amount, and so we're rescinding projects. When we rescind projects, then for one, there's a couple of changes that would be helpful to us. One is that if we could reestimate the cost of projects, it would be helpful, so that if in 2 years it ends up being $100,000 more or 5% more than we thought, that we would have some flexibility to reestimate costs and we wouldn't have to rescind the whole thing. That's one thing that would be helpful in terms of a change that would be helpful. Another thing is that once we rescind it, if we, because of that inflexibility currently and the fact that we're partially funded over 1, 2, or 3 years, so it's very hard to predict the cost escalation for a date uncertain. We're predicting the future and an uncertain period of time, so that makes it very hard. So then once we rescind it, we have to spend it on an approved project, and the approved project list includes schools that it includes projects that are now old as well. So the chances that those projects are still the exact same price they were a year ago when we bid them is also small. So that's why the number of projects we could use out of that deferred list is not the 100% of the resources available, because again, it has to be a project that was already approved and the price hasn't changed. So that's a smaller list.
Another potential solution, although imperfect, but the state does not reallocate the money that we can't spend from a contingency account that allows it to stay there until we're able to use that money.
Yeah, so another would be that that recycled funds would not count to our new allocation, and that we wouldn't get partial funding. So there's a number of recommendations we've made.
I know we need to maybe go. But
Yeah.
for later, I know that Dr. Sensley sent a letter to the state about this subject. I'm curious if you got a response to what it was.
So we did receive a response from the state, and so as I said before, some of the things they indicated was that they would not continue to partially fund us, and that was something that was taken into consideration moving forward. And there were other components of it, but what wasn't really related to the funding.
I just have a brief question. When we resend that money, it goes back to the state, and they put it on a chart showing Montgomery, like you did with Montgomery County and Baltimore County. What is showing is that we got even less when they send it back. And I'm wondering, does the other counties have this issue have this problem like we have?
I just want to make sure that we make sure that we say we don't send it back, so it's redistributed to.
Okay,
other
redistribute,
counties.
but do they have the
It's-
same issues that
Other
we have?
counties do, they do recycle funds for other counties, but we have more of those funds recycled than
Okay.
other counties.
Okay.
And it's compounded by the fact that we have limited local funding. So whereas another county, they might see a cost increase for a project, but they're able to use their local funds to pay for the difference. Where we aren't, we have to make a determination that, if it's, a small amount, then yes, we can possibly use local funds. If the difference is $1 million for one project, then we have to make that determination to rescind.
And I'm sure staff will mention that we were working with the NOC Commission to address all of these issues. And the NOC Commission has not included, from what we know right now, the issues about partial funding and the recycling of funds in their recommendations.
Right.
So that's the legislative action that will take place this session, is to amend on to the NOC Commission and work with Appropriations and Budget and Taxation, an EHG committee, to make sure that our issues are addressed this session.
And so we do have some recommendations at the end of the presentation to, as you said, Commissioner Frank, to make that green box a little bit bigger, and some other things that we have been advocating for, I should say, all year, in terms of identifying some of these issues with the state and having communications with them around these things. So this chart, as I said, when the state doesn't use, or when all of our contingency funds can't be applied to previous year projects, that money gets rescinded. And what this chart shows is over time from FY09 to FY18, the amount of new and recycled contingency funds that make up our total allocation. So if you look along the bottom of the x-axis, you can see that is the total amount of our awards in those funding years. And then we've broken out the amount of new money, which is the blue line, and then the amount of recycled contingency funds, which is the gold or orange line. And so this is where that number that you've been hearing in the media comes from, the $66 million. So we did this analysis where we tried to demonstrate the impact of recycled contingency funding. And so we looked back during this period, and what this results in is about $66 million over the last 10 years, where the state has recycled our contingency funds and then reduced our new money. So this was actually an analysis that came from us to demonstrate how the state's decision about reducing the amount of new money that they would allocate to us has impacted city schools. And so, all right. And so the way that we've been framing some of this discussion is equity. So when we are in a situation where we're receiving recycled contingency funds, and the state is making a decision to reduce our new funds, we are then receiving a smaller percent of that new state allocation, where of course fewer new dollars result in fewer projects. And if we think about the purpose of the CIP, if the purpose is to sort of equalize the ability for LEAs within the state to fund capital projects, reducing our new funds really just exacerbates rather than reduces that gap between some of the more affluent LEAs and ourselves.
Say it's intended to be an equalizer, although we receive, did I hear you correctly, we receive generally the same amount that Montgomery County does in state capital?
Just about.
We do.
So how is that an equalizer? On the operating side,
It's supposed to be, and then the actual,
on the capital side?
the state cost share is different for each county.
That's the overall money is not the equalizer, it's the actual cost share formula is supposed to be the equalizer.
Okay.
Supposed to be.
Where we receive a higher percentage towards our projects than those other counties.
But it's these things like recycling funds that are making it not function that way. So it's counteracting any purpose of the formula to serve that role is being undermined by this recycling funds.
So these are just a few recommendations that we felt are, practical solutions that would assist in fixing some of these problems that we're experiencing with state funding. First is, as Allison said earlier, allowing the cost adjustments for eligible deferred projects from the preceding year's CIP request. So that green box. So if we were able to say, okay, in FY18, this roof costs $1 million, but now that we're asking for contingency money, the cost is really 1.2. Can we just change the amount before the project moves forward? And then the second thing is the ability to directly apply contingency funds to approve projects. So right now, as an example, the Samuel Coleridge Taylor example that Cindy walked through, that was a project that was partially funded. It had to be rescinded because the cost increased $1 million, and now we resubmitted it in FY19. And as of the 75% recommendation for FY19, the project has yet to be funded. So when we have to resubmit as a new project, something that was rescinded, there's the risk that that project won't actually be funded in the next year, even though we identified it as a priority. But if we're getting fewer new dollars, there's just less money to go around. And so then we end up with priority projects that were rescinded that then don't get funded.
I have a couple of questions, several questions that Commissioner Peter Cannon sent to me to ask you, and it's in reference to the heat issue. Okay, and I'm going to just read all the questions off, and you can together answer the questions. He said, can you provide the operation committee, you frowned,
Listening.
operation committee, a school-by-school list of the priority and non-priority issues, facilities issues, what is outstanding, what needs to be addressed, what timeline do we plan to address, and how do we track, and when can we see an update? Should I repeat all of this? In other words, I think that we're on the same page. How can we monitor each of these schools to see where there's issues or concerns, where maybe the principal or someone who's responsible to let us know what's going on at the school, and what is it that we can do to be proactive about these schools? This is questions that we as commissioners and also you are being asked by the public. We need to have answers to those, whichever way you want to give that. Okay, and also he said, how do we handle important but non-emergency issues? And he said like broken locks and things that need to be done. How do we do that?
So what we have
Thank
is,
you.
we have a computerized management maintenance system. We have a computerized management maintenance system. And so when there is a call that comes in, we have what we call during cold winter periods of times, we have engineers that do what we call first pass. And so very early in the morning, at 5 a.m., sometimes at 4 a.m., they will walk all of our schools and they will check on the boiler systems and also the temperatures at the particular schools. If there is an issue, they will call and put it in as a work order for another technician or even one of our contractual vendors to come out and respond to that issue. That's tracked within our, as I said, it's tracked within our work order system, which is what we call, it's called School Dude. That's the vendor that we use. We track that, and then actions that are taken, all of those different things happen. That's the same thing that we also use in order to track even non-emergency work orders. So an emergency work order is something that's going to be responded to very quickly. Once there's a call in, somebody is being sent. A non-emergency is a work order that's going to be responded to probably within 2 or 3 days. Or what happens is that all of our schools, they have a blitz, which we will send our team, and they will have it scheduled within 1 to 2 months, where our team is going to go in and they will fix all of the non-emergency issues within a particular school. So door handles, some of those different things will be done. This happens where the principal will have a list of work orders that they have identified for their particular school. Our technician will walk the school with the principal for those identified work orders, and then they will send a team of repair folks that will come in and blitz the school at a scheduled period of time, and that's to handle the non-emergency issues.
So you have a form that you would fill out. For example, if I came to any school
So,
I'll start over again. I said you would have a form, or maybe you don't have a form, or it's computerized. Hopefully it's computerized, that with all the list of everything that you're saying. So if a principal called and said, we have the issue that we've been having, the cold, we have an issue, the temperature's X, this and that, and this would be listed, and they would show that at this X time we called, this is the time we got a response, and this is the information that we were told. And so anytime, any day, we could walk into any school and see that the lock on the door was broke. This was addressed this time, so we can have a standard form where the principal can use, we could use, anybody can use. At any time, we can go in and say, this is what's going on at that particular school. Is that the type of system you're talking about?
So that is the work order system that we have now. We've had it for 2 years, so there's still ongoing training. And one of the next steps of the training is to train principals so that they can put in their own work orders.
Okay.
And that through the system, we would have responses. And so instead of them sending us an email, they can send it into the work order system.
Right.
And they can track their work order through the system, and that we can respond to them using the system. So that the email that they send, it would be to the work order system, and then our folks will respond back and forth. So the way the process works now is that the principal will call their area facility manager, and the area facility manager will issue a work order and then send a tech to respond. That tech will then put into the work order his time that he's put in, any actions that he's taken. So yes, we can track that. So if a school say, I have an issue, I can be able to pull up that school and have a list of all of their work orders. Things that are emergency work orders are things that are being responded to. Things that are non-emergency work orders, that school has an established time, which we actually have available for the principal of when they're going to be scheduled to have a blitz, where all of those non-emergency issues are going to be addressed during that period of time.
You know what I recommend, and I think that would be important, so this question will never come up again, and this is what we have to start doing this so we won't even have to ever have this again. I think it would be a great idea at some point when you complete that whole process, send to the board that whole system so we can observe, we look at it, and we won't have those questions again, because transparency is critical at this point, and so we can be a part of be an advocate for what you do, because we do that. We advocate for, when we're explaining what's going on, I need to be accurate about what I say, because I'm out there saying, this is that, I need to be sure of what I'm saying, and I think that, and I'm requesting that you do that, and I'm documenting at some point. I'm not saying you got it next week, I got to, it's coming out. I'm just saying we need to see that so we won't be out there saying things that aren't accurate. You know what I mean? And I think it helps the whole system to know that we're doing all these wonderful things, but we're all confused about how it's being done.
So for clarity, is it that you would like to have some type of overview training of the module system that we use, or access to the system?
I don't want training. I'm just saying, whatever the principal is tapping into, or whatever you're tapping into to see if the job is done, if they're getting a lock changed and they request that lock, your chart or your Excel or whatever you have will show that on today they requested a lock. 2 weeks from there, the lock was repaired by whoever repairs it. We don't need to see the names. We just need to see the process in the end.
So I think, like how we have incident reports that are sent to the board, there might be maybe monthly some sort of chart showing that X was requested and the date it was completed, just something like that.
What I'm saying is, we don't even need to see all of when the work was done. We just need to see a blank form of the process.
You want an
organizational
what happens
chart.
when the principal calls in a challenge? How do they report it? What happens to it next?
Exactly.
What is
Oh,
the response?
Like a flow chart.
A flow chart. I can do that
Flowchart.
right now. You
Yeah.
can do that. That's not rocket science.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can do that now. We
got
need
it.
to see from beginning to the end. We need to see that if somebody reported that the temperature was 50 degrees and they reported it, that's what's going on. You have the date, you have the response, the person came in and checked it out this, in X date and time. We don't need to see that. We just need to see the Excel or the flow chart that you do this with. We need to
Okay.
see something is done other than a call comes in, we send somebody out and did the work, and we need to see that we've done this, because we get concerns that we didn't show up, and we do show up. So we need to say, yes, we showed up on X day, and this is what was done by X person.
And I think it makes sense to have both the flow chart as well as, to Dewana's point, a regular way that we're reporting on, how many calls we're getting, what the percentages of calls that were responded to in what period of time, how they were resolved and how long it took on average, so that there's some way of monitoring.
And this is good for the administration, so you would not have to call, it saves time, it saves money. You would not have to call a supervisor or to say, did this happen? You could tap into your computer to see and bring it up and see results. It would save labor. It would save a lot of time.
And so that's what we do now. For people that are at the manager's level, we use the work order system. So if a school calls in or school emails me and they say that I have an issue, and then generally I'm able to pull up in the system their work order, and I know who it was assigned to, and I know the last action that was taken on it. So if I need to follow up, then I can go to that, someone who was within that department and say, this is the work order. Someone said that, it shows in the system that it's resolved.
Right.
Have somebody go back and verify.
Exactly. Thank you.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
I am Ken Thompson, the Chief Information Officer for the district. I'm going to take a second and let the team introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is Armstrong Carmen. I'm the Special Assistant of Dr. Thompson.
Good morning. My name is Elvis Tia, Director of Infrastructure and Security, IT.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sashi Budula, Director of Applications.
Good morning. Michael Radding, Director of Tech Support Services.
As a request of the Board, we come this morning to present to you or provide to you an update of the status of technology within the district. We're going to cover some key areas. Again, the alignment with district initiatives, the technology footprint in the district, some initiatives we have for that 17, 18 that bled over into this year. We're going to talk about the security, our overall infrastructure, talk about applications within the district, the technical support, and additional support services.
Can you, as you go through this, if it's relevant, tie in the procurement requests that are on the agenda for today
Yes,
into
sir.
the presentation?
I
Thanks.
sure will. At a high level, research tells us that technology is a key component. It is not end-all, be-all, but it is a key contributor, a key tool within the toolbox that helps improve literacy, facilitates the instruction within the classroom, and used for our staff in professional development. The primary responsibilities of IT within the district is to provide the infrastructure, to provide the support, and also to maintain the data and applications that provide the forum for the instructional and business needs for the district. At a high level, I wanted to show the district footprint, that what we currently have in the district. We have over 107,000 email accounts in the district, over 3,000 AV devices, over 3,900 access points, which is growing tremendously, and by the end of this year, we expect to double. We process over 14 million emails a year. There are over 1,500 virtual desktops. We have over 2,400 switches. In our fleet, we have more than 52,000 devices. In our application suite, there are more than 200 applications. Our service desk process and address over 103 tickets a year. We have over 2,500 VoIP phones in the district, and we expect it to grow, as well as roughly 4,200 printers and copiers within the district. Our budget as a whole accounts for roughly 1% of the district budget. Of that budget, 30% of it is IT personnel. The remaining is utilities, maintenance costs, hardware costs, and the updates of systems within the district. There are some initiatives, key initiatives, that we are extremely proud of that we've accomplished over the last 16, 18 months. Yes, sir.
Going back, you broke out the 1%, or whatever that is. What's the total budget is?
19.4. Our annual budget is 19.4 million a year.
Oh, the total district budget. I got you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We wrote this year, within the last 18 months, we rolled out a new student information system. This was our first trial at a cloud-based solution, and at the same time, this is our first opportunity to provide a portal for the district for both not just parents but students as well. We rolled out a new upgraded our learning management system this year, which was Blackboard, and we have a enterprise-wide BI solution, which is Tableau, which replaced many of the dashboards, daily dashboards, which is real-time data, on time and point. We migrated over the last several months over 12,000 email accounts in Office 365, which brought about tremendous enhancements for the district's data sharing, secure emails, the whole 9 yards. Last couple of years, we're proud to say we have gig connectivity to every school within the district, providing internet access and wide area network for our students and staff. We also implemented a guest wireless network for the district. Traditionally, they had to call the desk. Now, it is any guest within any of our buildings can request access to our network and receive approval within seconds. The one-to-one initiatives, the board was very gracious and allowed us to roll out our first true 2 one-to-one school pilots over the last year, Dallas Nichols and Edcom, Park, we're getting in the saddle real well there. And last couple of years, we received recognition at the state level because we are going so well. In this, one of the most noteworthy things is that we have dispatched our technicians into regions. So it is unacceptable to be a day to respond to students as they take these tests, but it is a matter of hours before we get there. For our legal team, we roll out Clearwell to allow them to do their own e-discoveries, again, cutting down time and efficiency and effectiveness in how they access their data.
Okay, from the security and infrastructure standpoint, we'll be talking about 3 major things: cybersecurity protection, wireless expansion, and improved network and voice over IP. All right, so we have about 283 incidents since 2016 of cyber attacks throughout the United States, and we were also attacked. This map here just shows that we are in the blue. You see different colors. There's a legend at the bottom that shows you what each color means. And we were in the blue, and we were hit, but finances were not compromised. From a cybersecurity protection standpoint, we decided to upgrade our system. So we upgraded our firewall infrastructure. We also developed a cybersecurity awareness training, and we also developed a multi-factor authentication process. There's also a failover protection to hedge against compromise. Phishing scam protection, we have created a task force to respond to this adequately, so we are in a better position than before. We were good before, but now we're better to handle this situation. Extending our internet capacity. So as Dr. T alluded earlier about our 1 gig per school, we are in the process of increasing from 1 gig to have the capacity to grow up to 10 gigs per school, and that is for future growth. And implementing this, we're going to be using our WAN, our dark fiber, managed internet service, and this is going to save us about $2.6 million annually by the time this project is complete.
I don't mean to interrupt Elvis, but this is 2 of your board action items here, Commissioner. in reference to. We're currently at 1 gig. The proposal you have in front of you for the board for the 23rd agenda is moving us to the 10 gig capacity. The second one, E-Radio Elite Services, the team, I have a very sharp team, very proud of them, but we have experience in building our own WAN. We have experience in leasing a WAN, but we had never, I do not have the capacity on staff for the ROU solution that we selected for this one. The second action item that you have in front of you were for those services. We had to get the expertise from outside of my group. Again, we just never had the opportunity to do it, to tutor us, to help us to ensure that, number one, we were in line with FCC laws, requirements, accounting for the equipment, following the processes, and ensuring everything was in place. These are two of the action items here.
The next thing is wireless accessibility. So we have full wireless coverage in about 62 of our schools. FY18, we just rolled out wireless to 12 schools, and that is inclusive of the 62 schools, meaning those 62 schools, everywhere you go into the school, you will have wireless presence. We have wireless presence in every school, but it's not everywhere in every school. Now we have it everywhere in the 62 schools. And we continue to roll it out as we speak right now, because our objective is to make sure wireless is everywhere in all of our schools. And this is thanks to E-rate funding, we were able to make this happen. Voice over IP, so we pay a lot of money. So we are also rolling out our voice infrastructure, meaning we are moving away from the POTS line, the regular analog phone line, to voice over IP. This will enable us to save $2.5 million every year because it's very expensive. So, and that will give us a better voice quality. It's going to be flexible and portable because users will pick the phones from one location and just plug it in the next classroom. We will also be able to respond to whenever they have a problem adequately. Now we have to wait for Verizon to show up at the school, which is not acceptable.
Excuse me, let me ask you a question that's probably off the deep end. When you're negotiating for this system with other companies before you put in a bid, do you ever ask for a discount?
And that's, it's very.
Negotiate a discount and make it competitive?
Yes, ma'am. But every solution within IT, we go out for a request for proposal. And in those, it's negotiating exactly what you're saying. And I can use our WAN as an example of that negotiation. When I arrived, I would say 5+ years ago, we was paying more than $5-6 million a year for the WAN. 2 years ago, we cut $2 million off that. Now we're getting ready to cut another $2 million off of that. So the negotiation is fluid and it's going on. So yes, that is part of every solicitation.
And in the process of you doing it, you look at what they do for other counties or other
Absolutely.
districts, and you ask them and compare what they did for other schools, other districts, other systems, and negotiate and say, why not us? Why don't we get this discount? So you do all of that before.
And not only do we ask them, but the CIO world in K-12 is very small. We talk to each other. So not only do I take their, but I go to my colleagues. What services are you receiving? What is your cost?
Right.
So that is part of the overall approach in ensuring that we are receiving the best bang for the dollar in the district for the services we receive.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the, sorry about that. Moving on to the applications, world of things. As initially we articulated, we have over 200 applications we support. Again, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the enterprise applications landscape and some of the key initiatives for FY18. Looking at the landscape, and again, you can look at business applications, you got student information system, you got communication and collaboration systems, and also you have education system. Starting up top, we got, I would say, student information system. That is your core system to capture your student grades and attendance, behavior, and all that. That's the backbone. That's a critical system. Again, as Dr. T articulated, we rolled out this system last year, August of 2016. In fact, we implemented a brand new solution. We implemented less than 8 months, and we are proud that we can say that we really implemented that system really good. Moving on, the business applications is We got a lot of business applications here, starting all the way up top, which is your ERP solution, which is your HR, your payroll, your benefits, your employee self-service. There's a whole lot of systems within that umbrella. Then again, you come to the education system. We got the LMS system, which we implemented. We rolled out to a new upgraded LMS system this year, completely cloud hosted. So again, we got performance and assessment systems there, which is your data link systems, your identity systems. Again, on the communications collaborations, you got your email, you got your city schools website. So there's a whole lot of applications, as I was saying. There's more than 200 applications which we support. Some of the key initiatives for FY18, one of the major projects we have kind of started off is our ERP environment is almost 20 years old, right? That is your HR, your payroll, all that stuff. So we're looking at options, what are the current business challenges we have? We spend a lot of time with our business community to understand what are the challenges they have. And again, every system has a life cycle, right? So it's almost 20 years, so we got to step back and look at, because the technology has changed, there are better systems out there. So that is something which we have started, and we're going to look at the options we have. The other initiatives we're working on is the Enterprise BI solution, the Tableau. We rolled out the CEO Climate Dashboard, which pretty much gives an overview about your attendance, your enrollment, your suspensions, your dropout rates, and everything. Until last year, we used to do everything on a piece of paper, like everything was in Excel. Now, this year, we have real-time reports available for that. But extending that, that same information to our schools, so schools have that information. We just recently rolled out to the ILEDs, and we're going to extend that to the principals, so they have that information. We're also looking at rolling out additional dashboards on the student side. Again, we're going to look at rolling out some dashboards on the business side, which is your HR and your financial data. Again, the other initiative we're looking at is the new student online registration portal. Now, if parents have to register the kids, they have to come with a piece of paper or a bunch of papers to the school to get the kids registered. But what we are trying to do is you can access the system online, scan the documents, upload it, come to the front desk, just verify your documents, and then you can go ahead and register your children. That's something which we're trying to do a pilot for some schools this year.
And so now we shift to technical support services. The two areas I'm going to focus on are device support as well as incident and service support as well. So one of the key tools that we use to track our incidents and support tickets is our HEAT software ticketing system. And so early on this year, a presentation was made to the board about this new HEAT software system. And so just as a reminder, it provides anywhere, anytime access to the software. So regardless of whether you're sitting at a computer in the district office or sitting off-site connected to the computer through a different device, whether that's a cell phone or a tablet or anything else. In addition to that, the software just has a lot of functionality, and I won't go into everything, but it gives us things like real-time dashboards to monitor and track different metrics, and then single sign-on gives staff the ability to go into the system and initiate routine requests, whether that's user access, training requests, as well as other uses similar to that. Another key area is mobile device management, and so we have a mobile device management solution that gives us security, it gives us monitoring, and it gives us management. In terms of security, only authorized users are able to connect to sensitive district information through mobile devices. And Dr. Thompson mentioned 2 solicitations that are coming up for procurement. There's a third one on identity management solution, and so this gives us an additional layer of security. There's multiple layers within the district, but this would address help to ensure that staff don't have their identity compromised in any kind of way. And more details will be explained on that solicitation when we get to the procurement section. And so I mentioned monitoring, so it gives us the ability to lock unaccounted for devices, and if a device does get lost and reported stolen, we can wipe sensitive information from that device. And then I mentioned management, and so it just gives us the ability to quickly configure and push information out to devices, and this includes devices that are used for instruction, just saving teachers time from having to do that kind of back-end work.
Thank you.
Oh, so just one more thing too. In addition to that, with the heat tracking system, we're able to collect information on what customers are saying, feedback that they give us. And so this is very helpful in looking at our processes and looking at areas where we can improve how we serve our customers. And so this is just an example of a graph from that system.
Thank you, Michael.
I just want to say something that I'm observing here. With all this technology sitting in front of me, I feel like I'm sitting on a hill, okay? So, in Congress somewhere. So I'm sure that the question that I had earlier in reference to technology that could show us what's going on in the schools is just a drop in the bucket, right? You're all going, yeah, right? Huh?
We have a strong, yes, we have been
Okay.
we were sitting back listening, and Mr. Scroggins, our CEO, we have some things that we've talked about this weekend to allow him to move better and to give
Yeah.
you all the visibility
I'm sure
that you
that
need.
you already got it together sitting there.
We don't have it together, but we have it in our head. We need to put it down.
I'm
You-
sure with that
you-
expert, okay, thanks a lot. I just needed to say that.
So there are additional services that we also support in the IT office, and we wanted to highlight a few. For instance, with our 21st century buildings that are turned over to us as they come online. The first two that are out, we have about 26 laptop carts in those facilities, with 70 desktops and over 112 administrative computers in these environments. We also started to pilot a Chromebook environment in these new facilities, which gives our students and teachers access to single sign-on and centralized management of the Google G Suite applications. It's a very robust education offering in the Google G Suite, and in our 21st century buildings, students and teachers are taking advantage of those systems that we are supporting in the IT office. As these buildings, again, get turned over to us, we are also managing their network and infrastructure in these buildings. So our office through Elvis's shop also manage those continued services in our new facilities. We also are participating in the Sprint 1 Million project. What it is, it's Sprint is partnering with our district and other districts highlighted on this map. With our district, they're providing 25,000 devices over the next 5 years to eligible high school students. So those are students who do not have readily available internet access at home. So they're able to get a mobile device from Sprint, which is tied into our mobile device management. So it's going to be secure. It's going to be a managed device. But those devices actually include hotspot connectivity. So when they're away from our education facilities and are at home, they could still do research and do any type of homework if they need those connected services at the residence. We also receive a lot of devices.
Do we know how many of our students are without access to the internet at home?
We do not.
Percentage?
We have not did that survey to determine the exact number of students who do not, but it's a part of this initiative. We're collecting that data now, Commissioner, because a part of a requirement for this program is that the student do not have internet access at home. So we're in the process of collecting that data, but we do not have it readily available right now.
Right, so we've issued a survey to determine if a student does or does not have access. So that's what Dr. T is indicating. As part of this process, we're now receiving those survey responses, and in the future, it'll give us a good insight as to who
Thanks.
these students are.
One question, the survey that you're sending out, are you sending it to the students or to the teachers, the instructors, to get the information from the instructor?
I'll let Michael expand on that.
Yes, so we're sending the survey information to schools, principals and school administrators, and they're sharing that with students. Though we also have reached out to some parents and guardians directly with that information as
Because
well.
we all know from being educators that when you give it to the students and send the information home, you don't get good data.
Yeah.
So it's best to do it, and we know, and it's preaching to the choir, that to give it to the teachers and they can get the information right in the classroom and submit it back, we'd get more accurate information. And this, it doesn't even matter if it's K through 12 or higher ed. It's difficult to get data back, so that's just my recommendation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So in addition, we do receive a lot of support from the community, and in the means of device donation, so far we've received over 1,000 donated devices in the district. Some of these donations are location specific, so an organization may decide to donate computers to a particular school in the system. If they are not location specific, then here in the IT office we determine where some of our more needy students could benefit from these device donations. So that's something that we also handle in-house as well.
I thank you for telling us that, and I appreciate what you just said at the end, because some of the donations might not come to the students who really need it.
Correct.
It would be nice to know. It's wonderful to hear 1,000, but it would even be more wonderful if we could hear if it went to the students in the areas that's in great need. Okay, thanks.
Gotcha.
And if I could have just 60 seconds additional, per request of the board, you wanted a quick sheet or a reference sheet when you see procurement items, i.e. the ones you have in front of you today. And this is our first pass at trying to provide such a tool to you to refer to when you here's things like switches, access points, routers, internet connectivity. What we tried to do here was, if you see a renewal for application, that you would see, based on that, it would fall into our application bucket. If you see something in reference mobile device management, configuration management, it would fall into our support bucket. If you see something in reference to WAN, LAN, as you see in front of you today, that would be in support or fall into line with the network and infrastructure bucket. Again, this is fluid. This is our first pass in providing such a reference per your request, and hopefully this will provide some insight. And last but not least, and I will be finished, the third action item that you have in front of you is in reference to the identity management, which is reference to slide 12. And I know I am a little biased, but we were one of, this was as of last month, of 283 districts across the country that were attacked. And when I say biased, I am very proud of the way the team reacted and performed in that. We are one last hit, and I don't want to quote this because the number is changing, probably one of 3, 4, 5 districts across the country that did not experience a financial loss. However, in an effort to ensure and a caution, abundance caution, we wanted the identity management solicitation for those who did indeed access that email. We want to provide that access to them. So this is in reference to the third action item you have in front of you. Any questions?
No, I don't have any more questions. How about you, Commissioner? Thank you so much. I think we got a lot done. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I look forward to all the information coming back.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm inviting procurement. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. I'm Jeff Parker, Director of Procurement. Before you today, we have 5 procurement requests. The first contract is with E&A Services. This is to upgrade our wide area network. As Dr. Thompson mentioned, this is an E-rate project, which means that the federal government subsidizes approximately 90% of the cost of this contract. This is a 10-year agreement with one 10-year renewal option. The total cost of the contract over the entire term is $37.6 million approximately. Assuming E-rate applications are approved by the federal government, the total expense to the district would be $3.7 million. It's also interesting to note that this contract offers us a annual cost savings versus our current price for these services of approximately $1.5 million a year.
That's a
Do you
question.
have any
So,
questions?
in the past, in the Operations Committee, you might remember Commissioner Casciano has suggested that when we enter into large contracts, that we look for opportunities to get collateral benefits, not just the scope of the work that's in the contract, that particularly when we're awarding a contract that's a multi-million-dollar contract, there might be opportunities to get, I'm making this up, free desktops or mentoring or computer mentoring. I really don't know, but I don't know that whether, Allison, that's actually been institutionalized or whether there's been any thought about a pilot approach to that, but in awarding a contract of this size, are we getting any other benefits beyond the actual scope for which we're paying that might have been negotiated as a result of wanting to get this award?
I call it soft costs, and most would call it hard costs. E&A has been with the district probably for the last 3-4 years now, and they have proved to be a true partner. For example, some of the, not necessarily desktop, but some of the additional benefits we received from them was in November when we were attacked. They went above and beyond to assist us in providing other services which was truly out the scope of their contract. Has it truly been institutionalized that they provide these extra services? It's been more upon the request of myself, and they have not hesitated in the past to provide whatever we actually requested. So as far as formally, no. Are they serving in a role to provide over and beyond what they are requested or contracted to provide? Yes. Did I somewhat answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's a debatable point. On one hand, we should just be faithful to the process and not look for opportunities to expand on the scope. On the other hand, why not? When we're awarding large contracts and companies are hungry for
Absolutely.
for contracts, that there may be opportunities to get something more, volunteer hours, et cetera. Whether the juice is worth the squeeze, I don't know, but it is something that keeps coming up, and I just wonder how we might even test the idea, even pilot it, clearly not here, but in the future. Again, a lot of these more larger contracts do come through or related to technology, so it's just something to think about here within the operations sort of umbrella of what's happening within the district, that there might be opportunities to do something like that on a pilot basis and see how it goes.
I mean, I think we'd have to think about how that fits within the procurement process,
Right.
so that there's an opportunity for anybody to make an offer about what they would be willing to do, in addition to whatever they're offering in the procurement. I mean, it's a competitive process, and so in that process, they're offering their best offer in order to be competitive with the other vendors. So if there was additional services that we wanted or additional, then we should be indicating that in the RFP, would be my take, and then, but.
Correct. It gets a little bit soft on how you evaluate those things. I mean, this contract does include a 10% MBE, WBE component in it, so that's, to your point, that addresses part of it. The other thing is that this contract is primarily providing, if I may, dial tone is what they're providing to the school. It's not like we're purchasing $37 million worth of people and time, like if we were doing asphalt or construction work or something in that nature. A lot of this is just sort of that, it's dial tone. Any other questions? The next contract is with E-Rate Elite Services. They provide consulting services to the district in terms of how we file our applications with the FCC. The contract before you is requesting a $45,000 increase. We will be amending that to reflect only $32,000 of an increase. We couldn't make the changes prior to getting this contract to you, but have finalized those numbers now. So the increase will be $32,000. The initial board letter says we're requesting an increase of $45,000. We're going to amend that to only ask the board to approve $32,000. And that's for some specific services that we needed, in particular the prior procurement request. They were very helpful in that solicitation in providing us consulting services on.
I have a question. I never understand, when we have an increase, why we don't predict that, or when you're doing a contract.
Well, this contract was specifically for and awarded for services related to our ongoing requirements for E-rate applications.
Okay.
What it did not encompass were additional requirements that the district had over and above those requirements. In other words, every year we have to file an E-rate application. So we did a bid, and they responded to it, and it was a fixed price. That was the initial board request. Now, the district decided, well, why don't we look at a dark fiber network, which is the prior procurement request? So we looked at it, we evaluated it, we saw cost opportunities and benefits to the district. So in order to make sure we, had a very successful procurement, we needed some consulting advice to help us. But more importantly, in filing those applications, those new applications with the FCC. So that's an example of a request over and above what we initially asked the board to approve and what was included in the contract.
I just never understand, and you have to help me here because it's something that you probably can explain better. I just never understand how the talent that we have here, that we can't see in advance the things that we need before, and then have to bring in someone later to increase the budget. You get what I'm saying? When I'm writing a grant, one thing that we do as a team, we look at what's going on right now, what we need, their needs are right now, and the people at the table can say, in the future, we know that we're going to need XXX. I don't understand how we can't do that in advance. Explain to me how we can, and sometimes you said the board approved it, with less than a year?
Approved the contract back in January of 2015.
Oh, that far back?
Yes.
Okay. Is
So,
that down there? I did miss that. Okay.
all right.
That's,
I mean,
That's
we tried to
3
the
years
greatest
ago.
extent possible, but these agreements are usually for at least 3 years and sometimes 5.
okay.
So, not unlike facilities where they come upon things that weren't in the original scope
Okay.
of the renovation. They find things that requires that
Okay,
we come
3
to the
years
board.
is a long time. Okay, I got it. I'm there. Thank you.
You're welcome. The last contract is the next contract is Identity Protection Services, and the estimated annual amount of $200,000. The next contract is to provide operating industrial plumbing supplies for the board, for schools. The estimated annual amount's $250,000. If the board doesn't have any questions, I'll go on to the next.
I
Thank
should
you.
say we're good while it's on. We're good. Okay.
Thank you. The next contract and the last is a contract with 2 vendors, Herman Bourne and Sons, as well as Middleton and Meads Company, to provide auto body services for the repair shop. This is primarily the repairs of school buses that incur body damage during the course of the year.
Commissioner?
I don't.
I think we're good.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. I want to, and thank everybody who's in the audience. Okay? I want to thank everybody for being here and people who are listening. And our next meeting is February the 20th, 2018. That's a budget update and transportation update. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.